The man returned to Earth before the disaster struck, and his first act was to pour all his resources into repairing a broken brush. Only he knew that this brush was a legendary double S-grade item that could grant him the physique of a martial saint. Time rewound to moments before. A game called War Economy quickly rose to global fame. Initially just an ordinary game, it transformed entirely with the emergence of the Space League. The game became reality. If one died in-game, they would lose their life in the real world as well. Moreover, the lower-ranked nations will face the devastation wrought by monsters. This has clearly escalated into a battle for survival. Currently, only 10 nations remain on Earth, preparing to confront their final life-or-death moment, as they must resist the invasion of apocalyptic beasts. However, against such formidable monsters, even with numerous players engaging in combat, they seem no more than tiny ants before their overwhelming power. A single powerful strike could obliterate an entire team. Yet, the appearance of one man turned the tide. He concentrated his strength into the palm of his hand. With a mighty swing, he unleashed his hand towards the creature. Accompanied by a violent shockwave, the success of his defense resonated throughout the battlefield. This man is known as the Holy Warrior, Seong Jihan. Although he paid the price of losing an arm to win, his glory was usurped by a blonde-haired uncle. The chairman of the #1 guild in the An Kingdom, the world's #1 player, Baron Williams. At the same time, the other girls rushed in to heal the man. Despite the impressive feat of taking down the monster single-handedly, as the guild leader, he was expected to shine alongside his team. Thus, he called for his teammates to relinquish the rewards from the boss fight. Though the others were deeply dissatisfied, they could do nothing, for he had become humanity's last hope. The guild chairman also explained the reason for not sharing the spoils with him. Because he wasn't a citizen of either nation. It was clear that he had grown accustomed to this treatment long ago. Even with his 3S skill level, standing 7th in the world, he still endured scorn and discrimination simply for not being from the An Kingdom. Yet, what tormented him the most was that he was now the sole survivor in Nation A. Just as his arm was about to heal, an announcement of mission completion echoed from the defense of Nation N, declaring success. Nation Z had also succeeded, while the remaining 8 nations faced total defeat. However, the conditions for victory required over half of the players to survive. Clearly, humanity had failed. Now, in this critical moment, they must defeat Uruk to grasp the hope of survival. Hearing this, the Saintess immediately proposed to the guild chairman, "To confront the Uruk, we need the help of the Archive. After all, it was thanks to him that they managed to defeat that monster last time." But before he could finish speaking, the chairman had already decided who would face the challenge, accompanied by a flash of white light. A colossal Uruk materialized before everyone's eyes. Instantly, the chairman unleashed his full power. In the blink of an eye, a tempest of lightning enveloped him. Yet, as he charged towards the beast to strike, next moment, a dark shadow darted past, followed by the chilling announcement of the chairman's demise. Panic erupted among the crowd. Within mere moments, humanity faced utter annihilation. With the final swing of the monster's arm, the ominous game over message echoed through the air. Humanity was classified as a worthless species. The Cosmic Alliance made the grim decision to eradicate humankind. Almost immediately, dark substances emerged around them, devouring everything in their path. The world had finally reached its cataclysm, a fate even the man could not deny. But just a heartbeat later, an error notification appeared, revealing that one soul had survived. Surprisingly, it was the nameless divine weapon of the man that resisted the obliteration. Even the Cosmic Alliance was taken aback. Had he known the true name of that nameless weapon sooner, Korea might have escaped its doom, preserving those most dear to him. At that moment, the deities of the Cosmic Alliance began to take notice of the man. After deliberation, they granted him another chance to challenge fate. As his vision blurred, when the man opened his eyes once more, he found himself back before the game began. It seemed like a golden opportunity. If he could leverage the knowledge gained from his past life, he was certain he could alter the future. This time, it was not just about changing the future, he would protect everything, having witnessed the world spiral into oblivion firsthand. and now he was back. Just when the cosmic alliance had emerged, Korea remained remarkably stable. Among the global player rankings, there were 11 beings deemed the mightiest, with the third position held by a player from Korea, the Sword Emperor, the seal of the true kingdom. Thanks to his presence, their position could not be shaken by other nations. But one fateful day, the Sword Emperor suddenly declared his allegiance to the new forces of Country C. This was the most shocking news in Korean history. It was on that very day that the man returned. In his memories, ever since the Sword Emperor departed, Korea's rank in the war economy had plummeted drastically. The departure of the Sword Emperor had led to Korea's downfall, and that very man was his brother-in-law. He couldn't comprehend why his sister had fallen for someone like him. If his sister were still alive, would everything be different? But now was not the time for such thoughts. His current attributes were in dire straits. But it is understandable. After all, the man had previously wasted time because he was unaware of how powerful this talent truly was. In this world, although everyone becomes a player at 18, only a select few are able to awaken their talents. When his talent was rated as the lowest level F, he began to waste his life. At that time, he did not understand the true value of this skill, which could only be demonstrated after awakening. But now, he is very curious as to why it displays as level 2 when it is only a level 1 attribute. It showed as level 2. He suddenly remembered that perhaps he had accidentally consumed an experience potion which led to the level up. But what was that? Why were there 100,000 achievement points? He couldn't recall doing anything grand. Could it be that everything had changed because he had returned? At that moment, an achievement point exchange card next to him caught his attention. It could unlock a relic store. It seemed like a special item meant only for him, so he decided to use it immediately. The next moment, the achievement store appeared before his eyes. It seemed this was the way to enhance items by upgrading the store to a higher level. After he upgraded the store to level 4, a notification appeared about an emergency enhancement repair that could restore incomplete items to their complete state. At this moment, the man's joy was unmistakable. Next, he stepped into the gaming room. Although it was the legacy of the Sword King, thanks to him, the man could now enjoy it. Immediately afterward, he took out his first item, a broken brush pen. When he used the emergency repair feature, in just a moment, the broken brush pen was successfully restored. Now, with all preparations complete, the Steer Eastern brush appeared. At the same time, the tutorial lock for newcomers in the Southern Copper tournament was about to start. Seeing that there wasn't much time left, the man quickly called up the status window and began to write on it. In the past, he was known as the Martial Saint for a reason. This pen had the ability to merge all attributes into strength. By simply writing those two words with this pen, he would obtain the legendary physique of the Martial Saint. At the same time, a formidable power began to gather, causing the status window to flicker continuously. At that moment, the countdown for the match was almost over. Shortly thereafter, he was transported into the battle ritual. The mission this time was to survive, enduring both monsters and players in the arena. As the number of remaining players halved, the survival match would automatically conclude. The arena, yes, but at this moment, what concerned him more was whether he had indeed acquired the Martial Saint physique. After a thorough check, the man breathed a sigh of relief. Not only had he obtained the Martial Saint physique, but he had also completed a special skill achievement. Achievement points increased by 10,000. It felt like reuniting with an old friend. This was merely the beginning of mastering the nameless divine art. With this, he could easily surpass this battle. Just then, an announcement appeared on the screen. A man not using a connector to play the game would have to endure pain within the game itself. Suddenly, he recalled the connector left by the Sword Monarch, a high-end device that could reduce pain by 99. But for now, it wasn't necessary to use that. At that moment, a mission notification popped up. Achieve the number 1 position in the rookie training course to earn 1,000 achievement points. With the Holy Martial Physique, he could accomplish this effortlessly, coinciding with the game's kickoff. He spotted a shadow lurking behind him. Just as he thought he could lay hands on the man, he froze. The man simply used 2 fingers to block his advance. Now it was time for his counterattack. The scene shifted. Time rewound before Do-hak-kui launched his attack. At this moment, he was ready to shine in the competition. After all, the Southern Men's Tournament was the first stage for the stars of major guilds. The guilds were places for player training and management, capable of molding powerful players right from the tournament's inception. He belonged to a secondary guild directly managed by the second group, which boasts many stars of tomorrow, renowned throughout the realm. Do-hak-kui joined this guild after receiving a first-class talent in agility, marking his entry into this extraordinary world. Yet, very few possessed such talent. Thus, it was highly likely he could make it into the top 50. Among the contestants, his gaze immediately fixated on a man in a white shirt who stood out remarkably from the crowd. Without hesitation, he charged in for an attack. To his astonishment, the man stopped his assault with just 2 fingers. This was truly incredible, as his own speed surpassed everyone else's. Then, with a casual flick of his hand, the man sent him flying, as if dismissing his meager talent. Did he dare to compete in this event? Couldn't believe it. Are you underestimating my first-class talent? The man nodded in affirmation. Hearing this, he unleashed all his strength. In the blink of an eye, his silhouette appeared before the man. But the man merely leaned aside, effortlessly evading the attack. With a series of swift maneuvers, he skillfully dodged each strike. Though his speed surpassed that of the man, in his previous life, the man had endured countless battles, while his own attack patterns were far too predictable. The man could even foresee his opponent's next move. When he unleashed all his strength into a single strike, the man merely flicked his wrist, sending the long sword soaring away. In a swift counterattack, his opponent was immobilized on the spot. Although he claimed he wouldn't spare the man next time, only the man understood that there wouldn't be a next time. As the player vanished, the sword in the man's hand slowly dissipated. Now that the warm-up had ended, he needed to eliminate over 5 opponents to secure the top spot. Just as anticipated, no one chose monsters as their foes. In the combat realm, apart from players, monsters also lurked in the shadows. However, defeating 10 monsters only equated to taking down 1 player. Hence, most players in the early stages opted to challenge other players instead. Especially creatures like Uruk, they often appeared in swarms, making them an undesirable choice for opponents. Just then, a new quest materialized: eliminate the Uruk horde. Defeating 30 monsters would reward him with 500 achievement points. Although it was a daunting task and the rewards seemed underwhelming, the achievement points were 5 times greater than those earned from defeating a human. With that in mind, there was no reason to shy away from this quest. Monsters were merely monsters compared to the true menace of Uruk. They hardly measured up. So let's see what happens. As the man rushed toward the horde of monsters, they charged at him in unison. At the same moment, 2 axes were hurled directly at him, yet he swiftly caught them. The axes had to be thrown in this precise manner. With a flick, the thrown axes swiftly took down 2 monsters. As the creatures stood in shock, the man appeared behind them, swinging his battle axe with deadly precision. Instantly, several monster heads rolled to the ground. At that moment, the mission progress reached 1 out of 6. Just then, numerous monsters lunged at him, but with a quick spin, he effortlessly felled them all around him. Meanwhile, a spear shot towards him, but he effortlessly snapped it in half. This spectacle left even the onlookers in disbelief. While they were still in shock, the man swung his battle axe toward a beastman, but in the next moment, the axe unexpectedly splintered in 2. Seizing the opportunity, several beastmen charged at him. Yet he remained calm, feeling a surge of power in his legs. Instantly, the ground around him erupted. Then, he reached out to seize a sword, and in the blink of an eye, the man completed the mission of exterminating the beastmen. He immediately received 500 achievement points, and his level surged higher. Typically, experience points are calculated after the game concludes. Though the man couldn't fully grasp what was unfolding, enhancing his attributes was always a good thing. Thus, he bolstered his power. The unique attribute power synthesizes all abilities, allowing him to unleash strength double that of an ordinary person. Moreover, when his power reaches 30, he will unlock the nameless divine technique. However, in the man's impression, strength is not an attribute that can be easily enhanced. He needs to accumulate combat experience and engage in continuous training to elevate his skills. However, the ease with which he can advance now is simply astonishing. At this moment, an arrow flies straight toward him. The man leans away to dodge. It seems that the two have begun to team up. Such occurrences are quite frequent in this game. The emblem on their armor indicates that they belong to one of the 10 major guilds in Korea, the Turtle Guild. It appears that both are part of the same guild. At this point, there are only about 60 players left. The game is nearing its end. Who would have thought there would be so few remaining? If he can evade this assault, he will successfully pass this trial. While the two are conversing, the man checks the status of his score. Although the man has only eliminated 4 targets, he still holds the top position. It seems his lead is firmly established. Just as a woman named Tringok lunges to attack him, a shadow suddenly appears and swiftly takes her down with just 46 points of power. At this moment, a warrior beside them witnesses the scene and trembles with fear. In the next instant, the man quickly appears behind him and unleashes a powerful strike to his back. Who would have thought his armor would be so resilient? The man then frantically slashes in one direction, increasing the frequency of his attacks. The armor is finally crushed. How could an ordinary suit of armor withstand my might? As the man shatters the enemy's defenses, 2 individuals sitting before the screen watch his every move. Even Minister Lee Hain-gwin of Human Resources is taken aback by the display. It is fortunate that he did not appear next to Lim Jae-gwin, otherwise he might not even hold on to the second position. Yet, the minister is curious. If he encounters him in the next match, will he have the strength to defeat him? Although he claimed he would try to avoid the man, the minister, eager to gather more information about him, orders him to confront him directly. He gazes at the man on the screen, lost in thought. Seong Jihan seems to have crossed paths with him before. Lim Jae-gwin, renowned for his steer talent nurtured by the Splinter Guild, is a star of the future. He was supposed to shine at the Dong tournament in Jangnam, but unexpectedly, the man's appearance has changed everything. No one can comprehend why a second-tier contestant possesses such formidable power. Who exactly is he? The scene transitions. Dongjeongnan tournament has concluded, and the experience gained from the competition has propelled him from level 3 to level 6. Immediately after, the man allocated all 3 of his attribute points into strength. In addition, he received the title of Champion of the Bronze Tournament. In this Bronze Tournament, this title grants a bonus of 1 point to all attributes and adds 20 experience points. Although it only applies to the Bronze Tournament, this attribute boost is still quite significant. With the support of the title, the man's strength has now reached 10 points. Once his strength hits that mark, he can effortlessly complete the Bronze Tournament, and the Silver upgrade station will unlock after reaching level 25. Therefore, focusing solely on the Bronze Tournament is sufficient. Just then, a thought suddenly struck him. It was the opportunity for class change. Upon reaching level 5, one can select a basic profession. Class change is a pivotal moment, granting players without a profession essential skills. There are 4 classes: warrior, archer, mage, and healer. In his previous life, the man had chosen to become a warrior. If he continued on that path, he would be able to progress more swiftly. However, the emergence of the achievement shop has opened up new possibilities for him. He could explore other classes to experience different skills. Then, when necessary, he could spend 10,000 achievement points to unlock an additional class slot. Thus, becoming a warrior was no longer his top priority. This time, the profession he would choose would be none other than this. The scene shifts back to the Dongjeongnan tournament, where the mission now is to defend the precious crystal and survive the oncoming tide. The battle will continue until only 5 towers remain. At that very moment, 2 beams of blue light flashed. The newcomers were an archer from the LK Guild and a mage without a guild, but equipped exceptionally well. Now, only the most essential class remained healer. The defensive mission is a battle of attrition, making the healer's support capabilities incredibly crucial. In the next instant, Lam Jingwen froze in place as a familiar face appeared before her. It turned out to be Seong Jihan. It seemed this was the defense match. Just 20 minutes ago, the man had chosen the healer class. Although the notification window indicated that this profession was unsuitable for him, he resolutely made his choice. The reason he opted for healer was simple. By selecting a support role, he could unlock the divine power skill. This was a necessary factor for acquiring a unique attribute. However, developing that unique attribute would be quite challenging, since he couldn't enhance it through practice alone. It would require a substantial investment of achievement points. Yet currently, achievement points could only be spent on the nameless divine art. Nevertheless, the man quickly devised a solution. He had thought of a very reliable plan. Meanwhile, the mage was vocally complaining, expressing dissatisfaction. He believed the man's outfit was too shabby to stand alongside his expensive gear. Although the archer attempted to persuade him to be quiet, he paid no heed. At that very moment, the man swiftly seized him and forcefully hurled him out of the tower. If you don't want to play, then just don't. Even without you, we can survive just fine. After being thrown from the tower, he no longer held the haughty demeanor he once had. Now he was kneeling, pleading for the man's mercy. To gain that mercy, he was willing to do anything. The man kneeling was named Kim Kwi-hak. His change in demeanor was not without reason. In this competition, each contestant started with 3 lives, but he had already lost one because of the man's actions. Then, during a conflict with the man, he lost another life. Now, he was left with only 1 life. If he were to die again, he would be at the bottom of this contest. Desperate to avoid such a fate, he begged the man for mercy, for the one who placed last would face the penalty of demotion. If that were to happen, the vast amount of resources he had spent on acquiring valuable skills would vanish without a trace. When his rank did not match his skills, those skills would automatically be erased. At that moment, the man suddenly recalled that he seemed to be quite proficient in fire magic. Naturally, fire magic was highly effective against monsters, and now that he was a level 15 mage, the man was certain he wouldn't easily give up such a precious resource. Meanwhile, Lam Jingwen was deep in thought, trying to recall where she had seen him before. Then she remembered that this person was named Kim Kwi-hak. He had once been a member of a top 10 guild, a mage with great expectations riding on him. However, in the silver upgrade competition, he had suffered 4 consecutive failures. From there, he began causing trouble everywhere and eventually became a failure. Just then, Kim Kwi-hak suddenly made a demand of the man. If you apologize to me, I will gladly cooperate with everyone. Instantly, the surroundings fell silent. The next moment, a familiar scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. You dare to ask me to apologize? Following that, the man promptly launched him into the air before knocking him away again. Mage Kim Kwi-hak crashed down outside the tower. The scene shifted to another mage utilizing fire magic. Just as Kim Kwi-hak had mentioned, fire was indeed very effective against monsters. At that moment, the crowd found themselves in an awkward situation and began to blame the man for his actions. Meanwhile, the man was busy reviewing his mission window. The limited time task offered a reward of 1,000 achievement points for the first position, along with related tasks. To slay 1,000 undead alone would reward him with 3,000 achievement points. However, with the time left, it was truly insufficient to complete the task. Yet, the man was unwilling to give up those 3,000 points, so he fell into deep contemplation. At that moment, Lam Jingwen had been observing the man for a long time and thought that he was just a selfish individual, always putting himself first. Guild Division had no reason to investigate him. Just then, the golden-haired boy hinted to the man, "If this continues, you'll have to fight alone." "Can I really do that?" At that moment, the man fell into contemplation. Perhaps he could handle it. Lam Jingwen, on the other hand, believed that a healer should stay back while he took the lead. But the man insisted, "That's unnecessary. I can be at the forefront." All he needed to do was protect the marksman. Just then, a colossal zombie unexpectedly appeared before them. As the two prepared to fight, the man raised the staff in his hand. In the next instant, a powerful thrust felled the creature instantly. Both of them felt utterly astonished. Was this truly the sacred flame, Was it divine power? At that moment, a horde of zombies surged toward the man, but in an instant he dispatched them with ease. Though he was unsure if he could keep this up, for now he managed to do it just once. Mission completion status 6 out of 1000. Suddenly, the man accelerated. In the blink of an eye, he plunged into the zombie den, and within moments, he had annihilated 26 undead creatures. The zombies, impervious to physical attacks, found themselves facing a man who unleashed a hint of divine power to vanquish them. Witnessing this spectacle, even the golden-haired boy became an ardent fan of his. Meanwhile, Lam Jangwin was left in shock, for this man not only wielded his divine power with precision, but, more importantly, every strike he delivered was aimed directly at the monsters' heads. Just then, the mission was marked complete 1 out of 5, qualifying him for an upgrade in divine power. Immediately, a notification appeared, announcing that the man had leveled up his divine abilities. It seemed he had guessed correctly. This was indeed another way to enhance his divine power and utilize it effectively. The sacred artifact, upon its first emergence, carried an enigmatic allure that continuously increased its value. Yet, after a decade, humanity had failed to uncover its hidden potential, allowing it to fade into obscurity. However, the man learned from Sophia that the sacred artifact could amplify the wielder's divine power. Although it was limited to competitive settings, he realized that his ability to become a sacred artifact stemmed from his long prayers to harness divine energy. Yet, each sacred artifact came with its own set of conditions, and he knew that someone was still gathering these items. Suddenly, the man recalled that he could recognize that person. Upon returning, he remembered visiting the Sword King's library to investigate. He was taken aback to find the ground littered with the now ineffective sacred artifacts. Indeed, the one who collected these artifacts was none other than his sister, a sister who had fought alongside the Sword King and was hailed as the greatest hero. But that was during a time when she had been at his side amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, the man focused on the staff next to a level 1 holy artifact, capable of absorbing divine power by striking the heads of evildoers. It was this very artifact that the man relied on to enhance his own divine strength. However, the divine power available for absorption was nearly depleted, yet using it to combat monsters was still quite effective. Meanwhile, Lam Jangwen appeared utterly shocked, as in her understanding, such maneuvers couldn't be executed through a keyboard. At that moment, the blonde-haired boy suggested whether they should assist those in need. Just then, a zombie charged at him. In the blink of an eye, a dazzling image flashed by, and the monster was dispatched on the spot. The man felt an uncanny familiarity wash over him. Manhwa Sword Lam Jangwen. Though he had the potential to become the next Sword King, it was unfortunate that he fell to the hands of an imposter. He then extended an invitation to the man, suggesting that if they collaborated now, their rankings would surely rise. After reviewing the situation and scores, the man agreed. Then I leave it in your hands. He leaped down from the tower, preparing to unleash a powerful attack. Instantly, a notification materialized in his status window. The limited-time quest had been completed, but as expected, the quest was only half finished. He realized that perhaps his current strength was still insufficient. When he became stronger, he would return to try again. Yet he wondered if this quest would appear again. Meanwhile, Lam Jangwen remained in disbelief. A healer of a lower rank than her had managed to accomplish this. Could it be a miracle had occurred? Just then, the blonde-haired boy decided to log out of the game. It was also time for the man to return to claim his rewards. However, Lam Jangwen called him back. The strength he demonstrated in the past 2 battles convinced her that he was the talent the Division Guild desperately needed. Thus, she requested his phone number. But she quickly realized she was being too hasty. After all, who would ask for a phone number right after meeting someone? Yet the man told her that if it was related to business, he wouldn't be interested. Furthermore, he had forgotten his own phone number. If they met again, he would definitely let her know. With that, he turned and walked away. At that moment, Lam Jangwen suddenly realized had he just rejected her. The scene transitioned. At present, the man walked slowly down the street. He couldn't recall his phone number, but had he just been accepted into a guild? Although he might soon remember his number, the guild seemed far too prestigious for him. Right now, he had no intention of joining any guild. He began to check his status window. His rank had increased to level 2, granting him 1,500 GP. While gaining divine power was beneficial, this amount of GP was utterly insufficient to purchase any creatures. Perhaps he still needed to return to his sister's house in search of more. After a long moment, the scene transitions to the man returning home. Yet, the shoes that appeared before him rekindled a multitude of memories. Every individual in life carries those moments of regret. And the deepest regret for this man was his inability to protect that special someone. In his past life, they were each other's pillars of support. Despite living in hardship, he never once faltered. The man always urged her to be strong. However, he failed to shield her from the storm. That fateful day became the most regretful moment of his life. Now he finds himself face to face with a long-lost relative, Yi the Ya, the daughter of his sister, and the Sword Monarch. To his surprise, she had returned early from her trip. She revealed that she was the only one who ended her journey prematurely. Since her father had joined the new National Guard, she was left all alone with him. Her worry for him was palpable, but didn't her father ever reach out to her? He did, but he only told Yi, the one thing he had immersed himself in love. For this, he was willing to forsake both the nation and his own daughter. Hearing this, the man felt an immediate surge of rage, though he quickly regained his composure. Regardless of certain matters, he only confided in Yi the Ya that he had fallen into the snare of love. To achieve this, he was prepared to abandon not just South Korea, but even his own daughter. The man's fury reignited, but soon he managed to calm himself again. After all, he was indeed that kind of irresponsible person. The scene shifts as the two engage in conversation, and Lee Haiyan muses that they might still be the targets for recruitment. Just then, an alert from the phone nearby caught his attention. Moments later, a live broadcast appeared before them, and both were taken aback to see that the one streaming was none other than Thin Chi Han. Simultaneously, he boldly announced to the audience that the Sword Monarch was actually his brother-in-law. Slowly, he lifted his right foot. In an instant, he harnessed his strength to strike the ground, creating a fissure. The man focused intently on the emblem of the Sword Monarch. As the audience gasped in astonishment, he raised his fist and unleashed a powerful blow. A single, devastating punch shattered the colossal twin sword statue completely. Next, he would declare his stance on the Sword Monarch joining the new guard ceremony. His actions were not without reason. The War King commanded the largest media presence in the world, and with a single click, the audience's engagement could reap numerous accolades. As the brother-in-law of the Sword Monarch, he was certain he could claim all the rewards. With a series of achievement notifications ringing out as expected, Yi Thezhen could also shine at times. Meanwhile, a familiar black twin sword emblem emerged before him, the insignia of the Sword Monarch's clan. They are all fervent fans of the Sword King, Yi Seon. When the Sword King left Korea, they criticized Yi Seon, blaming him for the circumstances that forced the Sword King to depart. If he could perish, the Sword King would undoubtedly return here. In the end, Yi Seon met a tragic fate at their hands. If you seek a target to unleash your wrath upon, I would be more than willing to be that person. Right away. With a single punch, the man shattered the statue behind him. The Sword King would never return. The man then pulled out his phone and declared, "Listen closely. Since joining the new guard, the last time he had a fairy tale moment with his daughter was just as I have mentioned. Yi Seon, for the sake of a woman, abandoned both Korea and even his own daughter." Following this, Yi Seon began to speak. "Hello everyone, my name is Yi Seon, the woman of the Sword King, Yi Seon. Though the Sword King has left this palace to him, yet he could not accept the wealth left behind by that man. Thus, he decided to donate it to the nation, hoping that it would seize this opportunity to cultivate even more exceptional gamers. As for the specifics, he would clarify later." 30 minutes ago, Yi Seon wore a look of skepticism. She couldn't fathom why this man would donate all his hard-earned possessions. Though he was somewhat difficult to understand, he alone knew that after Yi Seon joined the giant nation, he had aided them in annihilating Korea. This had ignited fury among the people of Korea. The government began seizing all of Yiseon's assets, leaving Yiseon in a state of desperation, even facing threats from the Sword King clan. Ultimately, she had to barter her very life, knowing she would soon lose her place here. Rather than losing everything, he chose to donate, seeking the support of the people. This also served as a form of assurance for Yiseon. Though he didn't quite grasp why the man felt compelled to act this way, he ultimately chose to trust his uncle, believing that the confident uncle would return. As anticipated, the criticisms from the Sword King clan began to target the man. But to ensure no mistakes were made, he started recounting, "Yiseon, I believe I have acted rightly. Although on the surface, you do this for a woman, I alone know that you fled to the giant realm out of fear that you wouldn't succeed in Korea. Right, Yiseon? You are outdated now. Once you've settled in the giant realm, make the most of your remaining days, for I will soon confront you. I will obliterate everything you possess." At that moment, as the man warned the Sword King, Yiseon's face reflected deep concern. The man's words sent shockwaves through the world. Yet, more than this, he was increasingly curious about why the man seemed to have transformed into someone entirely different. After facing death once, how could things ever return to the way they were? Just then, the doorbell rang, capturing their attention. Who could it be at this moment? To one side, the Sword King had already caught wind of everything unfolding. The scene shifted to reveal an elderly man arriving for a visit. The visitor was none other than Director Park Yun-ji of the War Department. Since the Sword King had left, he had been looking after the two of them with great care. Clearly, the man had anticipated his arrival, signaling for him to speak plainly. "No need for pleasantries. You're here to ask me to retract the donation for the Sword King, aren't you? Because if the government accepts this donation, it would mean acknowledging that the Sword King will never return. Even his uncle could not foresee this." The man before him had indeed undergone a profound transformation. As he had mentioned, they had not completely given up hope of finding the Sword King. To facilitate this, he suggested that the man adopt a management trust model, essentially transferring ownership to someone else with the condition that the Sword King would return later. The ownership would revert to him upon the Sword King's return. If both could continue to live here, that would be even better. Immediately, he presented the man with a contract, for only through this could both parties achieve a mutually beneficial status, and the man expressed his deep understanding of their situation. However, before confirming, he had to agree to a condition set by the man. The scene shifted, and now the arena was bustling with noise and excitement. At that moment, a figure appeared before the crowd, landing dramatically on the ground. It was the broadcaster, Liu Guangjin-se. Though he received much affection from the audience, his actions were quite poor. As a gold-tier individual, he voluntarily lowered his rank to compete in the arena alongside those of the bronze tier. With his overwhelming power, he mocked the bronze-tier contestants. When he decided to choose his first victim, surprisingly, it was Seong Jihan who stood before him. He was curious about this man and stepped forward to conduct an interview, but the man paid him no mind. Instead, he assessed his own condition. At that moment, his window displayed a notification the Sword King clan had issued a bounty mission to eliminate Seong Jihan, offering a reward of 2,000 GP. Seeing that Liu Guangjin-se remained inactive, the Sword King clan continued to raise the bounty. Finally, he accepted the mission at the price of 50,000 GP. "Then leave this matter to me." Immediately, he focused his strength into his legs, and in the next instant, he swiftly moved behind the man. Just at that moment, the man spun around, swinging his staff with a force that sent the long sword flying from his grasp. Almost instantly, he drew a dagger from his pocket. In the blink of an eye, a shadow darted past, eliminating him in a flash. The player, Seong Jihan, had claimed his first drop of blood. Achievement reward, 100 points. It seemed his culinary skills had taken a bit of a hit. Even though Lu Kwang Kim-suk had been slain by the man, he was resurrected almost immediately. The Cross of Resurrection allowed its user to revive once, but it could not be utilized in the national tournament. As he reappeared in all his glory, the man had already closed the distance behind him. With a single swift strike, Han Thang scored a double kill. It had been ages since he witnessed anyone wielding that item, which had one fatal flaw. However, that was only half the story. Today was bound to be chaotic, as this was an official match with spectators in attendance. And these onlookers were from the fairy clan. Their presence unsettled the man, as they hastened the doom of humanity. Though he longed to deal with them immediately, he had pressing matters to attend to first. He slowly gazed at the crowd, and in the next moment, they were struck with terror and scattered in panic. For he was far more fearsome than Lu Kwang Kim-suk himself. Glancing at the two holy artifacts in his hands, he knew he could take on more quests and reap greater rewards. He could only choose the path of relentless combat. At that moment, a quest appeared to eliminate all goblins present. This was most agreeable to him. The scene shifted as the man swiftly charged toward the goblins. In an instant, a powerful blow struck the goblin. A shadow zipped past, obliterating the creature on the spot. In the foreground, an announcement signaled the reaction of the holy artifact. It seemed he had discovered how to wield them by striking his enemies with the staff. Then, he followed up with a dagger thrust into the heart of his foe. Though he had grasped the use of the holy artifacts, it was clear that the man had squandered too much time. Yet, the ordeal was far from over suddenly. The Goblin King appeared right before him. In the next moment, the man swung his staff, knocking it unconscious to the ground. He raised the dagger in his hand and drove it straight into its heart. With that, he successfully vanquished the Goblin King and earned 500 achievement points. The man received the chef's attire of the demon god, downgraded from level epic to level 1. Despite the downgrade, the man could still absorb power from it. However, to triumph in this battle, he needed to keep an eye on the other players. If they were unwilling to approach him, he would make the first move. Meanwhile, Lu Kwang Kim-suk was seething with rage. The audience whispers about him, branding him as a useless fool. Yet only he knows that things are far more complex than they perceive. His combat prowess against goblins is at the very least above 35, and he can easily dispatch them without breaking a sweat. In this team tournament, the ability scores are capped at around 25. This man is undoubtedly a black tiger. At that moment, the screen erupted with piercing screams, and suddenly the dazzling golden light came to a halt. The situation in the arena had turned overwhelmingly one-sided. Players are falling to Seong Jihan at a speed so swift that even the naked eye can hardly keep up. In the blink of an eye, the man has taken down all the contestants in front of him. At this point, the rank of the holy artifact dropped from level 1 to level 0. In the arena, eliminating 10 opponents grants you 5,000 achievement points. Although he has amassed a considerable amount of achievement points and divine power, it is still insufficient for him. Just then, a mission appeared before his eyes, an epic quest to locate the Dark Queen in the arena and provoke her. To his surprise, an epic task emerged amidst this coin tournament. Completing the mission will reward him with 50,000 achievement points. It's worth noting that the constellations are very interested in the Dark Queen. The constellations are divine entities within this combat realm. Should he fulfill the mission they assign, he could receive a special ability from them. However, this is at least a task that typically only appears in the Diamond Tournament. With this opportunity laid out before him, the man could not let it slip away. If he could get a constellation on his side, the others would surely take notice. But amidst the myriad spirits, could he truly find the Dark Queen? At that moment, as the man claimed the top spot solo, major media outlets began to report on him. This was a record, the first established since the departure of An the Chan. In a flash, he garnered a multitude of fans. Those who once cheered for the Sword King now rallied behind him, while the golden aura became the target of public ridicule. His reputation was plummeting, but he couldn't care less, for he had become a devoted fan of Thin Jihan, dreaming of becoming her personal editor. Meanwhile, the two were engaged in conversation, deliberating whether to accept sponsorship from others. In the midst of this, the man sank into contemplation. Though this epic quest seemed straightforward, finding her amidst the crowd was as challenging as reaching the skies. Just then, a voice inquired if he needed assistance. Each time things went awry, his uncle always exhibited such concern. The man then shared his mission with his uncle. He needed to locate the Dark Queen in the arena, aside from knowing she was seated in the stands. He knew nothing else. Though the clues were scarce, he would track her down through the replayed segments. So, I count on your help. The scene shifted as the man returned to his room, then opened his status window. Now was the moment to execute this action, unlocking a new career slot. The man used his hard-earned achievement points to purchase a career slot, allowing him to add a new profession. This time, the class he would choose was Wizard. The instant the man pressed the confirmation button, a wave of purple energy enveloped him. In the following heartbeat, he felt a different kind of energy, divine power, flowing within his heart. The reason he chose the Wizard class was not arbitrary. Only by mastering both the Sorcerer and Wizard classes could he attain that unique hidden attribute, Force. All this information had come from the lips of Ba Lan, who often spoke with drunken pride before his return. What he boasted about the most was possessing a special attribute known as Force. Force was a unique attribute born from the fusion of divine and magical energies. Of course, no one else could wield it. He was the only one among humanity to possess both classes, and Force contained the power to manipulate space itself. Although in the past Bat Luan was the sole bearer of Force, now the tides had changed. For the man was destined to be the second wielder of Force. Even though Bat Luan had poor control over it, this unique attribute had solidified his position as the world's #1. To alter the cataclysmic fate of the Earth, the man must seize this power. Thus, he had to endure the agonizing process of simultaneously channeling divine and magical energies through his hands. Meanwhile, a red energy sphere began to coalesce slowly in his palm. Just when he thought he had succeeded, a powerful surge of energy propelled him back several meters. In this first trial, he had completely exhausted his magical power, yet he still couldn't keep both energy flows converging in his hands. At that moment, a thought struck him. Although he couldn't simultaneously gather both energies, what if he assimilated them within his body? He would begin with the divine energy in the upper dantian, merging it with the magical energy resting in the middle dantian, and finally use the strength from the lower dantian to stabilize it. Thus, the initial form of Force would materialize. All that remained was to compress it. Just then, a burst of red energy exploded from his body as he struggled to unify the three dantians. A warning blared exceeding the player's tolerance levels, life in jeopardy. Meanwhile, Sae felt something amiss and rushed back to his uncle's room. The failure of the dantian unification was truly unsurprising. Despite the man's attempts to harness power to condense and unify, the criteria for dantian merging were exceptionally stringent. You not only need to master the use of 3 different types of energy, but also achieve at least a score of 100 or more. If you attempt to merge recklessly, you might very well lose your life. Just then, Sia hurriedly opened the door to the man's room. When she asked why he had let out such a dreadful cry, he merely brushed it off, claiming he had a headache. But Sia was deeply worried, fearing something terrible might have happened to him. However, once she confirmed he was all right, she stated she would continue her search for the Shadow Queen and turned to leave. Observing the man's demeanor, it was clear that his attempt to unify the 3 energy channels had failed. He lacked both experience and rank. But it was no matter after all. He had still gained the power he desired. Though he couldn't unify the 3 channels, he had managed to blend divine and demonic energy. Thus, he managed to attain a certain level of power. The connection between the 3 sources of strength was indeed feeble. At that moment, the man sensed something unusual. Why was the starting value of his power only 12? Suddenly, a notification appeared on the screen. 5 power, and the value of power is shared. If that's the case, then simply raising one attribute would also elevate the others. How wonderful! Just merging 2 abilities has yielded such results. I wonder what would happen if I were to merge 3 abilities. But as of now, it was clear he still couldn't do it. However, once he had attained the desired attribute, it was time to experiment with his magical abilities. Yet, he seemed to have forgotten that he was currently devoid of any magical energy. The scene shifted as the man awoke from his dreams. After a night of absorbing divine energy, his power had increased by 10 points. Now, he was completely unable to absorb any sacred artifacts of rank C or lower. Meanwhile, after a night of relentless effort, Sia finally stumbled upon a clue about the Shadow Queen. Someone, utilizing their visual prowess, had detected some new creatures and captured images, later posting them online. In the images, a dark spirit appeared before the two of them. Currently, her capability was that of the highest Shadow Queen. Although they had discovered some new information, the man believed that things were not as simple as they seemed. Shortly after, Sia informed him that she would continue to compile this information the next day. Even the man had to commend her professionalism. However, glancing at the shattered mirror beside him, he fell into deep contemplation. Just 2 days ago, they had learned of a significant piece of information. The new woman of the Sword Monarch was named Thuehuk. She possessed a 3S talent and was extraordinarily beautiful. Could it be that the Sword Monarch had been enchanted by this woman's prowess? Naturally, that possibility could not be ruled out. Afterward, the man was cautioned by Bakthu. He must be extremely careful with this woman, as they suspected her talent might fall under the category of mind control. After all, before the Sword Monarch's emergence, many remarkable talents had suddenly appeared together. If her talent was not limited in frequency, she would undoubtedly continue to enchant powerful players. From that day forth, the man began to dig deeper into the secrets surrounding Thuehuk, yet every lead seemed to vanish into thin air. If what Bakthu had said was true, he needed to prepare himself meticulously, for they might have already set their plans in motion. Just as he resolved to take precautions against the nation, the scene shifted. Today marked the auction of the previous Sword King. The two were now clad in formal attire, making their way toward the ceremony. Meanwhile, Sia appeared visibly tense, but the man gestured reassuringly, signaling her to ease her worries. Just like the previous live broadcast, all we need to do is showcase ourselves. We haven't done anything wrong, so there's no need to be concerned about the gazes of others. Moments later, they arrived at the venue. At that exact moment, a man approached them, announcing that everything was ready. The man could commence the auction, yet he was taken aback. He hadn't anticipated that the condition he had set was to organize an auction for the Sword King. It dawned on him that the man's true aim was to draw the nation's attention here. Indeed, the man's original intention was just that. The special connection module of the Sword King Winthe Trun, along with all her combat data, was precisely what the nation sought. They would undoubtedly go to great lengths to acquire it. Given the current circumstances, it was clear that Winthe Trun wouldn't make an appearance. Therefore, this was an excellent opportunity for everyone to recognize the reality of the situation. Even the man beside him felt astonished, never expecting such a significant transformation from him. This was their last chance to sway public opinion, so the man reminded him to keep a close eye on the new security team's positioning. At that moment, a commotion erupted from a distance, and Sia instantly recognized that it was her aunt and uncles. Although they were trying vehemently to intervene, the reporters needed to focus more on the new security team's positioning. Just then, a heated argument echoed from afar. Thojia quickly realized it was her aunt and uncles attempting to stop Thejia from auctioning the Sword King's items, but a mere glance into their eyes revealed their true intentions. They simply wanted to exploit the Sword King's fame to line their pockets. They had no right to interfere in Thejia's endeavors. Without hesitation, he turned and stepped into the auction hall. As the scene unfolded, the moment the two stepped into the grand event, a swarm of reporters turned their cameras towards him. He simply raised his hand, and in an instant, a flurry of camera flashes erupted, creating a breathtaking spectacle that sent shockwaves through the crowd. A man stood on the stage, beginning his address. The auction was about to commence, featuring 3 extraordinary items. The first was a special gaming connection module designed to reduce in-game pain by up to 99, accompanied by combat data. The second was a personal data analysis tool for gaming. Finally, the research data on elite players from other countries surfaced. At this moment, conversations erupted as everyone seemed eager not to miss out on any treasures. for the insights from these high-level players were not easily obtained. Just then, a hand shot up from behind. It was Ngo Dien-Hua-Fu from the National Defense Team. He boldly declared his willingness to spend 5 billion to acquire everything here, along with a chance for a private conversation with Taeja, but was promptly denied by the man. "If there's anything important, speak plainly here," he insisted, emphasizing that the current atmosphere was not suitable for private discussions. Yet, he seemed hesitant at that moment. If you continue to exhibit hostility, it could become perilous. He was known as Bong Toi, a formidable guardian. Though he couldn't compare to Kim Vung, he was still an exceptional gamer. The man felt a spark of curiosity, wondering if he was trying to mimic Yoon Se-jin. As Bong Toi drew his sword to aim at the man, a swift punch flew toward him, catching him completely off guard. Just as he was about to strike, the man raised his hand to stop him. After all, this was a global live broadcast. No one wanted to display aggression in front of the masses. Meanwhile, Ngo Dien-Hua-Fu, standing beside, hastily apologized to the man. However, there was one thing he needed to declare beforehand. The purchase of all items for 5 billion included the opportunity for a private conversation with Taeja, and he needed to know Taeja's thoughts on this matter. After all, he was the heir to Kim Vung's legacy, thus making Taeja the definitive host of this auction. Furthermore, the topic of conversation revolved around memory, an issue that no one could refuse. Yet, Taeja immediately declined. He showed no interest in information about his father, believing it best to heed his uncle's advice. Though a bit disheartened by the rejection, he remained willing to spend 5 billion to acquire everything here. Subsequently, he pulled out an envelope from his pocket. This was the final letter Kim Vung had sent to Yoon Se-ya. Upon seeing Kim Vung's letter, Taeja fell into deep contemplation. At that moment, Ngo Dien-Hua-Fu was urging the man to sign the contract swiftly. However, the man found himself in a rather awkward position. Before returning, Ngo Dien-Hua-Fu had been banned from the Dark Nation's territory due to his remarkable ability to entice players from other countries. Thus, he was regarded as a calamity for the colossal nation. He might be linked to Thuy Hak, making it imperative for the man to remain vigilant. But the current situation was dire. If the sinful nation continued to seize Kim Vung's belongings like this, it would undoubtedly ignite discontent among the people. Just then, Taeja's statement captured everyone's attention. It was rumored that Kim Vung had donated the Kim Vung Kung. Though he didn't understand why Taeja had acted in such a manner, the intrigue was palpable. But that was the final legacy he left for him. Therefore, he hoped that Taeja could make good use of it. Moreover, their relationship had ended there, and there would be no further contact. Clearly, these were his words. The man then fell into deep thought. The abilities of that woman were definitely real. Although the man deeply disliked Lee Shijin, he at least recognized him as a trustworthy father. How could such a man abandon his daughter just because of a woman? Right after that, Taeja tore up the letter on the spot and asked Ngo Dien-Hua-Fu to convey the message. He was relieved to end the relationship with that woman. As he was pondering how to deal with the pile of shredded paper, he noticed another man swiftly raising his hand, magically gathering the scraps in midair. As he clenched his fist, the pieces flew together, forming a neat stack once again. A flame erupted, incinerating everything instantly. Everyone was extremely astonished because he not only possessed the skills of a warrior, but also held magical and divine powers. Even Ngo Dien-Hua-Fu beside him was very excited. This person was clearly the talent they needed. Immediately afterward, everyone rushed towards the man, all hoping he would join their guild. While he was still bewildered and unsure of what to do, Taeja suddenly collapsed to the ground. What was happening? When he anxiously inquired, Taeja simply stated that he was just acting to help his uncle escape from the crowd. After confirming that Taeja was indeed fine, he breathed a sigh of relief. He then announced to everyone that the auction scheduled for that day would be concluded early due to his niece's ill health. Immediately afterward, he assisted Taeja in leaving the venue. At that moment, Ngo Dien-Hua-Fu apologized to him and expressed a hope to have a serious conversation with him at another opportunity. But just after that, the card in his hand suddenly exploded. That was his response. However, at this moment, Ngu Dinhua Fu became extremely excited because he was convinced that the power the man had just used was immensely strong. Although he is currently just a bronze-level player, he will undoubtedly become the strongest entity before long. With Thejie's help, the two quickly escaped the hall. Just at that moment, an announcement rang out. Ngu Dinhua Fu had donated 10,000 GP points, a surprisingly generous contribution, showcasing his determination not to easily give up. At the same time, a voice halted them. It was Li Haingwin and Li Jian approaching. They soon introduced themselves. Li Haingwin, the head of human resources for the Funki Guild, expressed his pleasure in meeting the man. Yet, the man felt an eerie familiarity with Li Haingwin, as if he had known him from somewhere else. Whether it was his gestures or his confident demeanor, everything about him made the man feel as though they had met somewhere before. Just then, an inadvertent gesture by Li Haingwin made the man freeze in shock. He was certain he knew this person. Is it possible that in a world brimming with potential, one could overlook him? This is a famous quote by Dostoevsky. Though he was a great writer, he was notorious for his gambling. You appreciate this quote, don't you? At that moment, Li Jiaying immediately stepped in front of him and raised his voice in challenge. How do you know the lady's motto? It seems he guessed right. In the past, he was known as Zero, the representative of Baron Williams. Despite his constant intoxication, his unique talent allowed him to rise to the position of second guild leader. He developed skills that originally served only to boost experience points, but upon completing the new player tutorial, those skills expanded their reach to encompass every field. Among all the gifted players, Nurturing Zero proved to be the strongest. From their encounter, it seems the Guild of Divergence truly holds formidable power. Simultaneously, Li Haiyuan chuckled dryly. That's enough of the jokes. Without hesitation, he invited the man to join the Guild of Divergence, stating, "We need talents like you. Perhaps we can find a time to discuss further." It seems his uncle finally has someone interested. At that moment, Li Haiyuan was basking in the joy of success and reminded Li Jiaying to pay attention. He is the one controlling such a man. But soon after, the man confessed he had long forgotten his phone number. Instantly, everyone froze in place. Meanwhile, the young master thought his uncle was pretending to keep him engaged and played along. It seemed the straightforward girl felt uncomfortable and decided to leave early. However, he could take a business card if needed. He would reach out to her. Then he turned to leave. At that moment, Li Jiaying trembled uncontrollably. It was truly difficult to hold back his laughter. Shortly after the auction event, the man appeared once again at the Jiangnan Bronze Tournament. This time, his task was defense. However, he felt a bit weary as the young master misunderstood that the man had feelings for Li Haiyuan and thought he had ruined everything. Although this wasn't the case, the man was at a loss for how to explain it to her, yet he never expected to encounter Zero in this manner. Before returning, he truly was a renowned gambler, and because they shared similar experiences, their bond grew closer. Though he enjoyed betting on football in his spare time, he had never won a match, as he had never analyzed the player's talents. The scar on her face piqued his curiosity. Could it be he never considered removing it for? He was certain it was the price of dealing with a devil. Then he turned to the man, asking why he had only become strong now. If he had been this powerful back then, Korea would not have faced its demise. Without Korea, perhaps they wouldn't have to endure such a tragic fate, and his friends would not have to suffer the agonizing pain of death. Along with the fact that both of them hail from the H family, they share many other similarities, one of which is their inability to protect the most important person in their lives. Alongside the self-loathing for being too weak, at this moment, netizens seem to have noticed something unusual about the man. He is gripping a massive sword tightly, a class holy sword named the Stone Crown of Uruk. However, due to its sheer weight, its value is quite low. Yet, it appears this does not affect him much. As the man begins to swing the sword, it is clear he has adapted to its colossal weight. At this moment, viewers start to buzz, eager to know the man's condition. As the number of subscribers grows, this demand will likely become even more prominent in the future. But for now, the man has yet to fulfill his subscription goals, so he makes a decision. When the subscriber count hits 200,000, he will reveal his status. Or, if he fails to secure first place in the upcoming matches, he will disclose his condition immediately. Just then, 3 beams of blue light suddenly descend beside the man. The man is taken aback by the simultaneous appearance of 3 figures. A dazzling golden light accompanies an unidentified wizard and Diego Maside. This is the first time he encounters his wife. Before her return, she was a top-tier player. The man realizes something strange. He is a healer, while this place already has a warrior and a wizard, so he should be an archer. Yet, he distinctly remembers that before returning, he was a wizard. So why has he become this way now? Meanwhile, the wizard beside him harbors a deep-seated hatred for the man. What transpired earlier caused him to lose his precious skills. At this moment, he receives a notification from the window. The Sword King clan has initiated a mission to eliminate the crystal, preventing Seong Jihan from claiming first place with a reward of 50,000 GP. Just then, the announcement for the battle begins to sound. Diego Maside quickly performs a kick to launch the attack while signaling the man. Release the controversial report. Although previously unable to use it due to a lack of divine power, now he can fully do so. As he begins to chant, the attributes of everyone are enhanced. At this moment, the man turns to ask the wizard, "This time, will you play the game seriously?" Of course, because if he doesn't listen, the man will be thrown down from the tower. So, leave this to you. Following that, the man leaps down from the towering heights as everyone watches in bewilderment. At this moment, the wizard could no longer contain the rage boiling within him. This time, he wants to see how long the man can withstand the pressure. Confronted by countless foes, the man immediately unleashes fire magic. After all, this was magic activated upon acquiring the attributes of his subordinates, so facing this horde of enemies was hardly a challenge. As the magical energy surged forth, all foes were engulfed in a blazing inferno of azure flames. The man swung his colossal sword down into the earth. In the blink of an eye, every enemy before him was annihilated. Even those who witnessed the scene could hardly believe their eyes. Who was this Seong Jihan? Just then, a blood-soaked corpse lunged at him. But in the next moment, it froze in place, unable to move. As anticipated, the power to manipulate space was truly formidable. Within this absolute domain, anything that entered was subject to the user's will. Though others might be oblivious to this strength, the man was acutely aware of it. This understanding stemmed from his frequent training sessions with Baron Williams. Through these sessions, he gradually grasped the true potential of that power. Then, he enveloped his massive sword in flames and swung it with ferocity. In mere moments, the fierce azure flames swept across the battlefield. With 3 attributes at his disposal, he had become an unparalleled entity in the Tournament of the Bronze. This time, he was determined to achieve the monumental feat of vanquishing 1,000 foes. As the figure of the man glided through the swarm of monsters, all that lingered in his mind was the completion of his mission. Even the 2 spectators beside him were left utterly astounded. This guy was truly powerful beyond belief. At this moment, several onlookers had noticed Jin Guihe, sensing that something was amiss. They gestured for the shimmering golden light to turn its lens towards him. But in the very next second, they were rooted in place, for Jin Guihe was conjuring fire magic, slowly advancing towards the crystal. He began to unleash a torrent of insults towards the man, mercilessly mocking his lack of parents while dragging the Jiang family into the fray. In that instant, the man could no longer contain his composure. Was this fool courting death? As he returned and laid eyes on Xia, memories of past anguish flooded back. In the final moments before Xia departed, to shield her from the wounds inflicted upon her by the Sword King clan, she lay in his embrace, her body wrapped in bandages. But now, she was devoid of any warmth. This was the greatest regret of the man's life, yet he felt utterly powerless to change it. Thus, upon his return, he resolved that such a tragedy would never occur again. He vowed to protect everything that belonged to Xia. When he acquired the ability of his subordinates, he discovered something peculiar: he could wield the anonymous divine technique. Yet, since his combat power hadn't reached 30, he could only mimic its essence. But as he delved into the history of this technique, he truly began to feel a sensation akin to the anonymous divine technique. At that moment, the man immediately entered a state of intense focus. He envisioned currents of electricity surging from his feet, and in an instant, countless arcs of lightning erupted around him. And in this moment, he shall become the thunderbolt, a step capable of shattering the heavens. Just as Jingui, he prepares to obliterate the crystal, a radiant golden light appears, thwarting his every move. Though he gestures for no interference, the shimmering golden light insists on intervention to boost its registrations. In the blink of an eye, Jingui focuses his energy, conjuring a colossal fireball that hurtles toward the Crystal Palace. At that moment, a soccer ball interrupts his attack. It turns out to be Diego Maside. He harbors a deep disdain for actions that disrupt the competition, and even more so for those who disrespect their teammates. Therefore, he must put a stop to Jingui's actions. Hearing this, Jingui is consumed by rage, but in the next instant, the man swiftly approaches from behind him. It seems you have much to say. At this point, fear grips him, leaving him speechless. Yet, just as he attempts to speak, he realizes he cannot utter a word, for the man has covered his mouth. Initially intending to whisk him away immediately, the man changes his mind. The connection would merely lessen the overwhelming pain. Even if he falls, it would simply be a decrease in level, something everyone understands. But from now on, the man will reveal to him an entirely different world. He raises his right hand toward Jingui, who has lost all his skills. Though he does not wish to lower his level, it appears he has provoked the man's wrath. In the next heartbeat, an excruciating pain floods his body, rendering him speechless, as if he had been screaming in agony from the outset. I haven't even begun yet. Now, Jingui is plunged into endless torment. Yet typically, using the connection to fight does not yield such a strong reaction. At this moment, Masida reminds him, pay attention to what the man holds in his hand. He is still healing Jingui. Could this be a side effect? In simple terms, this is akin to a friend helping. When the body is in an abnormal state, continuing to heal it can trigger an overload reaction. When overload occurs, the body bypasses the connection and suffers 100 damage. He is curious about how the man achieved this. Analyzing the misstep, only a select few skilled in martial arts can accomplish this feat, allowing their energy to flow into the body of their enemy. From this, the effect rends muscle and shatters bone. Yet at this moment, Jingui still cannot fathom why the connection fails to function. Then, in the blink of an eye, the man strikes him down, and the announcement of Jingui's elimination echoes through the air. The man glances toward the respawn point nearby. Even the shimmering golden light cannot believe the scene unfolding before it. A familiar transition plays out before their eyes, but this time, before he can plead for mercy, the announcement of his death rings out. It seems I'll need to adjust my power even more next time. In the very next moment, Jingui, he came back to life. The man slowly approached him, his voice low and menacing. People like you must pay for what you've done. Just then, an announcement rang out in front of them. Shia had supported the man with 10,000 GP. At that moment, he hoped his uncle would reconsider. After all, the most crucial thing right now was the battle. After a moment's thought, the man decided that the punishment for Jingui would end here. Yet, he wanted to know who had given him the audacity to act this way. At that moment, Jingui was so terrified that he didn't know what to say. He spilled everything. He revealed that the mission had been initiated by someone named Sword King 898. If the task of destroying the crystal was completed, a reward of 50,000 GP would be granted. However, the man found this very strange. After all, a regular person couldn't possibly expend 50,000 GP to initiate a mission. Perhaps he was part of a group. Clenching Jingui tightly, the man pressed for more information. But then, he realized the mission had been completed long ago. Could it be that the lightning strike just now had caused this mace? The bolt that erupted during the jump had completely wiped out all nearby enemies. It appeared this power was uncontrollable, which was why things had turned out this way. Ultimately, what he had unleashed was not just an ordinary divine technique. How shameful. Perhaps he needed more practice. The man then expressed his gratitude to Maktadat, feeling deeply appreciative for the protection of the crystal and promised to repay this kindness. However, he still had some personal matters to discuss with him. But just then, the entire arena shook violently. As the man stood there, bewildered, a colossal beast suddenly appeared before them. The crowd could only feel an unsettling aura radiating from the creature. Its roar echoed, and the most terrifying part was that it was devouring the undead. Simultaneously, from the creature's mouth spewed out several blobs of slime. To their shock, those blobs soon birthed new monsters. At that moment, golden light flickered, revealing the truth. This was a type of monster that only appeared in the Golden Tournament. It had the ability to decompose bodies and combine them into new creatures. It was the flesh golem. But why was it here? Could it be due to a special mission? A special mission regarding lost origins. As the man pondered, without the crystal to assist in annihilating the flesh, suddenly an announcement boomed. You have completed the mission of protecting 10 towers. A supplementary mission to halt the flesh golem has been added. Everyone around was in shock. They never expected the tournament to have such a supplementary mission to thwart the flesh golem army created by the destroyer Black Hand. With the crystal's aid, they could close the power gap with their enemies. You wouldn't actually want to complete this mission, would you? Keep in mind that these foes in the Golden Tournament are incredibly difficult to deal with. Even though the task seemed nearly impossible, the man still wanted to give it a shot, for beyond mere points, there was a greater challenge awaiting him. There's also an additional reward. In situations like this, it's clear that this is undoubtedly an epic quest. While everyone is discussing how to deal with the monstrous horde, the man signals them to hold their ground. He then grips the holy sword tightly and strides toward the beast. The flesh golem is an immortal creature, and it can only be defeated by destroying its core. However, its massive form and tough exterior make it extremely challenging to take down. Moreover, it is a gold-tier monster. As he approaches, the man commands, "Step aside, please, Mong." In the blink of an eye, he darts toward the monster with lightning speed. Before anyone can react, all that remains is a deep footprint pressed into the ground, along with the man slowly raising his holy sword. The fundamental techniques of the nameless divine art, heaven, earth, and humanity, are the very elements that constitute this power. Drawing on this, he wields strength akin to a mountain, ready to strike. In an instant, a slash descends, obliterating the beast. The players are left in awe as the flesh golem is vanquished. Quest for the 4th tower has been completed. As the man swings his sword, cleaving the flesh golem, a golden light emanates, imbued with a complex tapestry of emotions: fear, despair, anticipation, and longing. All these feelings intertwine seamlessly. Ultimately, this culminates in a profound respect. It's the first time he has felt this way since his birth. The man is destined to become a top-tier player in the future, and he yearns to document every detail about him. Meanwhile, man steps forward before them. From this moment on, the fate between him and Matedat begins. As other teams stand frozen in shock at the beast's brutality, the battlefield is left with only the man and the remaining players. It seems that the rewards for this mission are truly valuable. Experience and GP are received at triple the usual rate. Then, the man speaks to Matedat, saying, "If there's a chance, let's discuss further," as he wishes to share insights about innate talents. However, Matedat appears bewildered. The man simply states that this relates to magic and will elaborate later if the opportunity arises. Is he suggesting I change my class to a mage? If it were anyone else, he might not pay it any mind, but even after showcasing such overwhelming power, perhaps there is a class suited for him. They agree to discuss the details another time. Although the Golden Light wishes to join them, the man declines him. Without hesitation, he turns and walks away, the scene shifting. The man receives the mission rewards and is informed of the next quest. The side quest, Trails of the First Disciple, will be unlocked in the Silver Tournament. However, even after acquiring the crystal fragment, the man feels a sense of disappointment. The sacred blessing embedded within the crystal is a rare skill, one that only saints can wield. It has the power to elevate all abilities by 50. This skill is essential for high-level tournaments, yet it is limited to battles below silver rank. Meanwhile, his current level has reached 13. Although he still needs to ascend another 12 levels to qualify for the silver tournament, his attributes have already grown immensely powerful. Just as he began to feel a sense of confusion, the sacred sword beside him resonated with energy. Moments later, divine power gradually began to converge within the man's body. Yet, strangely, his attributes showed no signs of enhancement. At that very moment, the sacred sword emitted a warning. The strength being channeled cannot be sustained. The device will face annihilation. It appeared that the three sources of energy had spiraled out of control. To avert a dire outcome, the man had to absorb this energy back into his body. Elsewhere, at that moment, Wu Dian and Fu were lamenting the failure of their plan. He had officially initiated the mission of the Sword King Clan 898. He intended to seize this opportunity to examine the man's status window, but unfortunately, he fell short. If only he could succeed once, it would be a tremendous gain. It seemed he would have to don the dark cloak for a while longer. Although Wu Dian recognized that the man was a rare talent, his superiors made decisions solely based on factual evidence. Thus, to win him over, Wu Dian needed to acquire the man's status window and use the information gleaned from it to validate his worth. It appeared that the time had come to employ special methods, much like he had once done with the Sword King.